My name is Mike. I'm 87 years old. You know, at this age, time becomes different. It doesn't run anymore, it thickens. Like maple syrup. Every minute has its own flavor. And what I love most is the flavor of the morning in this house. When the sun breaks through the old curtains that Margaret hung back in '92, and the dust motes dance in the golden beams of light. They say a house is just walls and a roof, a pile of bricks and wood. But to me, it's not. This house is my chronicle. Margaret and I bought it in 1981 for $87,000. Back then, it felt like a fortune. We worked 2 jobs, saved on every little thing. I remember the day we first moved the furniture in. Margaret twirled in the empty living room and said, "Mike, our children will grow up here. This is where we'll grow old." She was right. David, Thomas, and Susan grew up here. Every scratch on this oak floor has a story. Right here, near the kitchen, there's an ink stain David tried to refill a fountain pen in the 3rd grade. And on the doorframe in the hallway, the pencil marks are still there tracking how they grew. The last entry was made by my wife's hand. Susan, 7 years old, 1992. I will never paint over those marks. Because if I do, a piece of my soul vanishes forever. This happened 3 years after we moved in. It was a harsh winter, and a pipe burst in the basement. I had to personally rip up several planks of our brand new floor in the living room. Margaret stood beside me with a flashlight, her face pale. We had saved so hard for that oak when I finally exposed the floor joists. I saw an old tin cookie box nestled between the beams, left by builders back in the 50s. We opened it together, sitting on the dirty floor in the middle of the night. Inside were old letters, a coin, and a yellowed photograph of a young couple. Margaret said then, "Mike, we don't just own this house. We're just a part of its story. We are its custodians." That night, we put our own treasure into that box, our wedding photo, and a note with our children's names. When my sons now talk about asset liquidity, they don't understand that beneath their feet lies our time capsule. To sell this house is to throw away our lives, sealed within its foundation. I still know exactly which board it lies under. In '96, a terrible hurricane hit us. The wind uprooted the old maple in the yard, but Margaret was most terrified for the lemon tree she had planted in a pot on the porch. The wind shattered the ceramic, and the roots were exposed to the freezing cold. The children hid in the basement, but Margaret and I ran out into the downpour. The rain stuck my eyes, the wind knocked me off my feet, but we dragged that heavy pot into the house, slipping on the wet grass. We saved something fragile in the middle of the chaos. Later, we sat on the kitchen floor, soaked to the bone, and laughed with relief. The tree still stands in my living room today, almost touching the ceiling. Every time I water it, I remember that storm. My children see old clutter, but to me, it's a symbol of our resilience. We built this house to have somewhere to hide from the storm. And now, as the storm approaches from my own children, I look at that lemon tree and I know I will stand strong again. A few years before Margaret got sick, the neighborhood lost power for 3 days. It was freezing, frost-painted patterns on the glass. The children called us, offering to let us stay at their places with generators. But Margaret wanted to stay. We lit the fireplace, spread blankets on the rug, and toasted bread over the fire like we were camping. We drank wine from the Christmas glasses and talked all night about how we met at a dance in the '60s, about our dreams. In the glow of the flames, Margaret looked as young as she did on our wedding day. That blackout reminded us that we didn't need much to be happy, just the 2 of us and this roof. Now, I often don't turn on the lights in the evening. I just sit in my chair by the fire and feel Margaret's presence in the shadows. My children think I'm in the dark and lonely. They don't understand. There is more light in this darkness than in their modern apartments. My home warms me from the inside. Margaret passed 4 years ago, and 6 months ago, my children began their dance. They wanted to send me to Silver Pines, a beautiful name for a place where the old wait for death. One evening, I overheard David and Thomas talking. They spoke about $1,240,000, about the estate, about the real estate market. The word estate hit me harder than any pain. Not father, an asset to be sold before it lost its value. I didn't sleep the night. I realized that the cost of those facilities would eat all my money in 3 years, and the house would be sold anyway just to pay for my pet. I went to a lawyer. I proved I am of sound mind. I updated my will and created a trust. Now, legally, this house is untouchable as long as I draw breath. Last Sunday, I drew the line. I showed them the papers. I am not moving, I said. You will get your share when the time comes. But that time will be decided by God, not by Zillow or your greed. This house is my life. This is where I feel Margaret. This is where I remain a man. Susan hugged me and apologized. My sons remained silent. Now, they actually listen when I speak. If you are listening to this and you are in your 70s or 80s, don't give up. Your house is your story. Don't let anyone turn your memory into a commodity. You've earned the right to live on your own terms. Until the very end. When we were buying this house, we were short exactly $5,000 for the down payment. The bank was ready to walk away. Margaret had an antique grand piano, a family heirloom from her grandmother. It was her greatest pride and joy. Without telling me, she sold it to an antiquarian just so we could sign the papers. I didn't find out until 10 years later. When I asked her how she could do it, she simply said, "Music lives in the heart, Mike." But children need a garden from that day on. I saved a little every month, and on our 25th anniversary, I bought her the exact same model. It still stands in the living room today. When my children say, "Sell the house," I hear the silence of that piano. In '91, David was a teenager, and we had a terrible argument. He slammed his bedroom door so hard he punched a hole in the drywall. I was furious, but instead of yelling, I made him help me fix it. We spent the entire Saturday on it. While we were sanding and painting, we finally started talking, truly talking. At the end, we both signed our names on the bare wall before applying the final layer of paint. Now, when David says this house is just an asset, I want to strip the paint away and show him our signatures. We weren't just building a house, we were patching our souls. After Margaret passed, my garden began to die. I simply didn't have the strength to go out there. But one day, I saw a single white rose, her favorite, pushing through the weeds. I realized that tending to this garden was my way of talking to her. Now, my yard is the best in the neighborhood. Every bush, every flower is planted so she can see them from heaven. When my sons say that maintaining the lot is too hard for an old man, they don't understand. It's not work. It's my daily date with my wife.